Hello and welcome everybody for this webinar, first webinar of 2023. Happy New Year to everybody who is able to hear me. Hopefully, no problems, no connection issues with your laptop, MacBooks, or phones, devices. Okay, so we have Jordi Falguera today with us. He's a good friend of us and a very experienced mentor and business agility executive coach, working for more than 10 years. And today, Jordi is going to talk about one of the very interesting topics to all of us, which is how to talk to executives about agile transformations, because we all know we need their full on buy in and support for successful agile transformations. So I will hand it over to Jordi and come out of the screen here. Over to you, Jordi.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Avi. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Light. And yeah, it's a very interesting topic, especially if you're experiencing it firsthand and it's not always working. Let me start with a story. It was 2015, and after going through the third elevator, my mentor, Alan, and my mentor at the moment, Alan, and I were sitting in one of the longest marble tables I had ever seen in my life. I was scared. I was going through all the knowledge, all the pieces of knowledge that I was considering related to agility, getting ready for any questions he might have. He had just been promoted to chief operating officer of one of the 50 largest bank in the world in 35 countries, and now he is the president. And by the way, one of the highlights is at some point he asked if I wanted water. I said yes, and that's my biggest highlight. That's my it should be my signature on LinkedIn. um, uh, this guy was pouring water in my glass. And the goal of this session is that at least I'll be able to provide at least 20 tips that you can use when talking to executives. And the way to do that is I want to share that in form of stories because we humans love stories, and I think personal story is the best way to communicate these learnings. All right. At any time, you can ask questions. It might be that I answer them right away. If not, I'll answer them by the end. So let's get started. So first of all, we're talking about how to talk to executives. Therefore, it's very important that we understand their context. And their context is most of the times these executives are three decisions away from being fired. Um, and they typically are either going through golden retirement. Either they will be getting at some point a big bonus. When I say big, I'm talking millions of euros or dollars, and they are into what most of us in the agile world known as the golden cage. This idea of they feel trapped, but they cannot move somewhere else because they cannot get as much money or as much position as they would get where they are. So in their day to day, what do they face? Um, so typically they come and they say, "Oh, I want to transform. We want to transform this organization." Huh? Okay. Are you sure about that? What do you mean by transform? Because most of the times they just either want to go for golden retirement. They have these bonuses. They are middle managers feeling trapped. So what I want to share is what is the context of these executives, and especially those that are either sponsoring the transformation or running the transformation. Because one of the key aspects that happens most of the times is they experience what's called the imposter syndrome. Maybe many of you have experienced that as well. It's that relationship between what you know versus what you think you know, and you think you know much less than what you really know. It's literally impossible to know everything, but at the same time, for them, just imagine they have this position, they have this salary, and they need to back it up. They need to show evidence of capacity of being able to deliver. And very often, here's the story. There was this guy. He was ex-com member. He was switching in multiple positions. At some point, he was the CIO. Then eventually he switched to marketing. Then he moved into country manager. And then ultimately he was the head of HR. So if you ask the guy, how much do you know about each of these topics? Um, the honest answer should be not much. But at the same time, they need to show evidence that they're capable. Therefore, the opposite of this imposter syndrome, the way it's usually fought is through what's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And and here's the story. I was working with this guy and shared with him ultimately Agile is about common sense. And he immediately assumed, okay, so if Agile is about common sense, and I have common sense, therefore I know Agile. Well, so he was able to distill my 10 or 15 years of knowledge into one sentence, and he immediately assumed that he was able to do the same as myself and all the coaches that were working on this engagement were able to do. And that is called Dunning-Kruger. It's the opposite relationship. Imposter syndrome, I believe I know much less than I do really know. Dunning-Kruger, I believe I know much more than I do really know. So that's one of the topics they experience this. The second one is basically they execute on what's being agreed beforehand. So very often we say, oh, should an agile transformation go top down or bottom up? How do we do it? And then the answer is, wait a second, is this transformation part of the 3-year strategic plan? If it is, this is what's going to happen. It's going to be assumed as one more project or one more initiative. It will come top down and it has a beginning and it has an end because it has a budget associated to that. If you want to try a transformation bottom up, good luck. You need to fight all the politics, all the um, hierarchy, etc. And yes, you might eventually create these happiness islands, but at the same time, what you really want is both at the same time. But if it comes top down, there are several aspects that you need to consider. And this struck me very strongly because um, back in the day I was thinking, oh, they're hiding us to help in this transformation. So it's very close to my heart, and I want it done, and I can envision what they might eventually become when we go through it. But for them, this might just be another initiative. Yes, setting the right expectations is a very important aspect to consider. So, imposter syndrome, they just say, okay, if this is what I need to execute, then I execute it. The next one is very, very important. They need to be successful. Success is not optional for them. They need to be successful and they need to show evidence of success. Here's a story from another client. That one was in Mexico. And there was this KPI or this OKR that said you need to have more and more transformation in the country, and more transformation implied you need to double the amount of teams being transformed. Just think the logic for a second. It's not about you need to deliver more value or better value or shorter. It's you need to double the amount of teams. So what that meant was, hmm, okay, what constitutes a team? Well, basically, it needs to have a scrum master, product owner, and then some people. So what they did is they created an Excel spreadsheet and they put double number of lines and they said, hey, we have double number of teams, which is the opposite of what you want. But you need to show evidence of success. One of the most frustrating aspects when you're part of a transformation is you try to persuade them, let's go, let's work with teams, etc. And then at some point, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year down the line, somebody says, okay, we put $10 million into this project. What's the return? And then the answer goes, oh, we certified this number of people, or we have this number of teams, or we have this number of coaches. What's the business benefit that transformation is getting from that? So these executives, they believe they know, they need to act as if they know, and then they need to show evidence of success. But usually it's not that easy through a transformation. Sometimes, so that's why when they ask me, I'm considering whether running this transformation or not. My suggestion is, well, that's going to be a risky job. If you accept it, it might have consequences. So the next aspect is they have very, very limited time. I remember in an energy company, um, their schedule is really crazy. So sometimes they have like 5 minute or 15-minute slots. And I was in this company helping them alongside with a colleague. And after 3 minutes, the sponsor, she stopped that and she said, okay, guys, no, 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 no. Don't tell me what you do. Don't tell me how capable you are. What is specifically what you want to describe? And what she shared with us is one of the techniques that I've been using very frequently that I know that is not very used, which is, unfortunately, I'm going to use the forbidden word. It's this company that has a K that starts with Mac and it has a K. It's McKay top-down communication strategy. And the way it works is first you have the point that you want to address, and then you break it down into three sub-bullets. You describe it, and then you stop and you remain silent and you ask, do you need to know any more information? At that moment, if they do need, they might need to know the next level, or they just might need to know some clarification on some point or another, etc. But the way it definitely doesn't work is you figure out your storyline and then you try to go through each of the storyline. And then if that doesn't work, then if they stop you for some reason, you try to reconnect your storyline. It doesn't work that way because they might cut you off and then leave the room in less than 5 minutes. Okay? So the other one is when we are part of a transformation, for us, it's very important. We think this is the best thing in the world and it is very important for them as well. But bear in mind, they have other concurrent priorities. So it's what we believe is important for them and what is really important for them sometimes is misaligned. And just imagine, so we've been hired for the transformation. We believe we can contribute to it. We believe that that is also important for them, and they're paying us good rate, a good daily rate, or they're paying us good money for that. And they don't even grant us time so that we speak to them. So what the heck's going on here? So here, what happens is, for us, that's what everybody in the organization should potentially work on because it's very important. It's changing the ways of working, it's changing the culture, etc. But for them, this is one of the 5 or 6 projects that they need to concurrently run on, and they are not paying enough attention to it. And the percentage of attention they pay to is related to the percentage of attention the CEO or the steering committee is paying attention to. Therefore, it might be that you believe you should drag them and show them, hey, let's focus on this, but they don't really care. They don't seem to care. And there's a confusion there. So with all of this, um, what I created over the years is this idea of, okay, so let's come up with a list of 10 suggestions that I believe can be helpful to so that they can we can address how to talk to them. So this is my 10 commandment when talking to executives. And I put this picture of Moses coming down from Mount Sinai with the tablets of the law in his hands, because these are my insights after hundreds of hours pitching to Fortune 500 companies. So mostly executives, BPs, XCOM, etc. So that's they work for me, and that's why I encourage them to work. So let's go through each of them. The first one is explore the problem space. Or I call it in a different way. I call it stop hunting ducks. So what does it mean? I was in this FMCG company, fast moving consumer goods, and I used to do pitching of the Agile services that we could offer, and then we had a team that could execute based on the pitching, etc. But in my case, it was getting to meet lots of executives and telling them that we were good and that we could do whatever was needed. And one of the biggest mistakes was when I was focusing, and precisely today in one meeting we had a couple of hours ago, that was one of the topics that we were talking about, which is trying to explain what we can do. If you get one takeaway from this session is that is irrelevant to them. They are not interested in what you can do. They're interested in what or how can you solve their problems. So if you tell them what you can do, you're giving them double work. They need to figure out how what you can do will help them solve their problems. So it's so much easier to go and figure out what their problems are first. So the story with this FMCG company was we went there, and sometimes when you have good sales guys, they figure out the problem for you. They tell you, okay, they struggle here, they struggle there, and then you go right to the point. But it was not this case, and I was still very junior on that, and so I went there, and they asked the question, "Oh, what can you do for us?" Ha! And then I was ready. And I started sharing, oh yeah, we can talk about agile, strategic level, etc. And then I was looking at their face, and they were kind of putting a strange face, and then like, oh, but we can also talk about products. And then it was more of like, oh, does it work strategic? Their face doesn't seem to be nodding. Okay, should we work about product? Should we work about team? Should we work about efficiency? Should we work about culture, people? And there are so many areas that is so much easier when they say, what can you do for us? Oh, just reverse, just explore the problem. Because otherwise you're trying to hunt ducks. What is it that, why did you call me in? How can we help? How can I help you? And then from there, keep exploring. Don't jump into solution yet. Keep exploring, keep understanding. Ta, ta, ta. What you basically want, the way I picture that in my mind is I try to get whatever prey I want to hunt closer and closer and closer and closer so that it's impossible to fail. And that's basically every time that they're asking what you can do, just revert it. How can I help you? And then get it closer and closer. Keep asking questions. Keep understanding. When obviously, lots of context that happened in the past. The silos. The vertical silos versus transversal value adding. Conflicts among people. The politics, hierarchy, all of that. That happens in every large organization. But you want them to tell you, not you figure that out. Because when they tell you, that becomes their thing. And one of the first one of the first comments they will make is, oh, here we're different. Don't challenge them. Just not, okay. I want to better understand you guys. Okay? So that's the first one. Second one, another story. Be pragmatic. A couple of years ago, a little bit over 2 years ago, I became independent and I'm supporting large organizations, but on my own. And I went to this organization and I met all the VPs in one of the departments. And at some point, they started sharing. They said, "Oh, here's Jordi. He's the Agile coach," and and one of them said, "Hmm, I don't think Agile can help us." And another one said, "I'm a little bit skeptical about Agile and agility, but maybe you can convince me." So they went through a round of presentation. I'm in charge of um, America. I'm in charge of Asia Pac, etc. And then at some point, he stopped and said, "Oh, is that okay if I introduce myself now?" Sure, go for it. And I said, "Okay, guys, my name is Jordi. I'm a pragmatic agile coach. What that means is I'm not here to try to convince you that agile or agility is a good thing. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not here to evangelize you on anything. I'm just here to help you with problems you might have. So I'm only going to work with you if you have one problem, condition one, and you acknowledge that you have that problem. We don't want to work on problems they don't acknowledge because that's double work. We need to first show them make that problem visible, show them evidence that there is a problem they were not able to see, but it's really a problem, and then solve the problem. It's so much easier if you ask them, "Do you have any problems?" And then you start addressing them one by one. From that moment, it's not as much about agile or agility. It's about problem fixing. And then I tell them, and don't worry, I know enough about agility that any problem we will address it, but then we will wrap it in a nice paper of agile and agility. So you're going to look very agile. Don't worry about that because sometimes they need to check that they're agile, etc. So very important. Address, acknowledge problems. Okay. Next one. Ha. This one is challenging sometimes. Be honest and truthful, or do not try to impress them. What typically happens, especially when you haven't had the situation of talking to executives in the past, is you're impressed by by them, by their position, sometimes their demeanor, how how they speak, how they introduce themselves, etc. And you try to overcome this perception of feeling below them by trying to impress and by trying to show that you're capable of that, etc. So that's basically you're trying to overcome your imposter syndrome, and you try to do that very often by throwing agile jargon at them, which we're going to see in the next one. Don't do that. So they don't know about what you know most of the times. They know about their stuff and they expect you that you come with an agile knowledge, etc., to complement what they need. So if they have misconceptions, address them, but don't challenge them yet. Don't overcommit. Don't tell them, "Oh, we're going to change big time, etc." Just be honest. Okay, first I need to better understand what you guys are up to before I tell you what we can accomplish. So I remember another at another client, I went through the IP department and they said, "Oh, are you an agile expert?" Sure. Okay, then I want you to create me a model on agility. It's no, 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 no. I'm not going to do that yet. Eventually, we can work on that together, but not yet. So, if you address misconceptions early on, your life will be easier. But if you overreact, if you overcommit, then eventually you will not be able to deliver and you're going to get in trouble. Okay. So fourth one, and that is one where I see many coaches consistently fail at. Adjust to their language. Adjust, adapt to the language. Don't use agile jargon because there's usually this idea that if you talk about something and you use the jargon of that topic, then you're knowledgeable. But you're confusing knowing the name of something versus knowing something. And what typically happens is they are already very frequently on the imposter syndrome. They need to act as if they know about that. And then you start throwing names at them and they don't know what to do with that. They cannot say, well, they can say that, but sometimes they don't say, okay, I didn't understand what you said. Can you please elaborate that with a more basic language? They don't say that because that makes them look stupid or potentially look stupid. So, what was happening in my case is I was learning so much the Agile jargon that I could not communicate without using it. So I deliberately, that's another suggestion, I deliberately went through each of the concepts of Agile and I tried to simplify them and explain them without any using any Agile words. This is a technique called the Feynman technique. It's an American physicist known for his work on quantum mechanics that he won the Nobel Prize, etc. Um, and and this guy had the technique that was that broke down into four steps. One was teach it to a child. Second is review the feedback, organize and simplify, and then communicate. So if you're not able to explain any concept, not just transformation or agile related, any concept in a way that a 40-year-old or 10-year-old can understand, you don't know that concept enough. So my suggestion is do not throw agile jargon, revisit the concepts, how you explain them, and try to explain them in a more um, in a simpler way, making sure that the words that you're using they're better understood by them. Okay. Fifth concept that is, or fifth commandment: master your knowledge. If we connect these multiple points, that you have very limited time and then you want to make sure that you communicate the maximum possible value in the shortest amount of time. Usually, what doesn't work is a presentation. Very often, and I learned that from my mentor. Very often, we would go into a meeting, and the first question was, "Are you going to present something? Do you need a projector?" And I could see many people doing that. So when you're presenting something, you're intrinsically talking about what you can do. And then you're going through your pitch and you're going through your storyline, etc. And then they finish, and usually it's like, thank you so much, we will call you. This is the suggestion instead. Master your knowledge, learn about your knowledge. I'm using a technique that I mastered over the years. It's called micro concepts, but basically, you can use anything that you can get to get your knowledge closer to you and being able to use it and connect it to other knowledge. Why? Because the moment I learned to do that, the game completely changed for me. I would go to meetings with C-level executives. I would go with my laptop. I would put it closed next to me and I would say, how can I help you? And their answer would go, do you need to present something? Well, I don't know. It depends. I have many slides that I can show you. But what is it specifically that you need to know about? And very often it was less about having the perfect slide and more about being able to draw it in a flip chart on the spot as you go and adjust your answer to the question they were asking or the problem that they were having. That was mind changer. That was game changer. It was really revolutionizing. So the way I did that is I would use micro concepts. That those are micro pieces of knowledge that I would be able to combine. And I would master them. I would have maybe like 3,000. So at some point, I would think to myself, I dare you to ask me something that I don't have an immediate answer to. Now compare that to those that go through some PowerPoint slides and then try to present and then try to explain, etc. Okay. So the next one is be brief in your answers and don't try to sell them anything. There's a set of four maxims that I completely encourage you to look at. Those are the GRICE maxims that are very much related to this top-down communication strategy. So the GRICE maxims are the maximum of quantity, the maximum of quality, maximum of manner, and maximum of relevance. Let me go through each of them. Maximum of quantity is just share the amount of information they need to know. Do not share less information trying to um, make their curiosity open up or something. That's not going to happen. Do not give them super long answers that will bore them and get them bored. So what you want is give them right amount of information, what you consider is the right amount of information, and then ask, do you want to know any more? Do you need to know anything else? Or do you want me to connect to anything? Keep asking for feedback. This is exactly what we're saying in agility. So there's nothing special here. So maximum quantity, maximum quality. Make sure that you're truthful. Make sure that what you're communicating is the right thing. Do not embellish stuff too much that then it's difficult to back up. Maximum of relevance is make sure you stick to the point. If they ask you something, focus on answering that particular area. Maybe you are a super expert in technology and you don't know that much about strategy. Then try to give your best possible answer related to strategy, if that was the question, and then eventually say, do you want me to connect it to technology or something else? Do not try to change and course correct and try to show evidence of knowledge of something that they are not asking for. And the last one is maximum of manner. Make sure that you use a vocabulary that they can understand, because otherwise you fail into the don't use the jargon, and then sometimes they not only don't understand, but they don't understand and they need to act as if they do understand and go straight to the point. Okay, next one. That is super challenging for some of you, I'm sure. Do not outsmart them or challenge them, especially early on. There's a story of a colleague of mine, a well-known American coach, told me some years ago. Just imagine that you go to a client and they start talking agility, and eventually they just try to show you how skilled they are in agility, or they just try to show you that they did their homework. And then he told me when they come, they start talking about agility. I asked them, how many years of agility experience do you have on that? Okay. So, right. So you just created an imbalanced relationship there. And probably you're looking after your self-importance, and you know what your place is at the table, but what you want is you want to be pragmatic. Some problems, some companies have problems that they have identified and they were existing there 20 years ago. They continue existing there. So you still have time. Very often when we focus on agility, they come to me and say, well, I did understand agile is about this, and that. It doesn't matter if they are completely off topic. If they are convinced about that, for the next 10 or 15 minutes, for me, agile will be about that as well. Agile is mostly about teams, right? Or agile is just Scrum and Kanban. Well, tell me more about that. I'm not going to challenge you yet. And then they continue explaining. Only when you gain confidence, only when you have established your authority, you can offer other views. My suggestion is do not challenge what they just offered. Just say, yeah, that it's about Scrum Kanban. There might be potentially useless discussions potentially at the same time as well, things that make the communication smoother, but do not confront them because who wants to hire somebody that's confronting them from very beginning? I call that the Hollywood effect. Sometimes when you watch Hollywood movies, they try to compress everything that happens in just 1 hour. And then there's this conversation, and then somebody says this perfect line, and then boom, everything changes. Well, I have talked to over hundreds of executives. I've never seen that happen. If you challenge them, if you treat them badly, or if you want to show that they don't know as much as you know, they will feel offended, they will feel exposed, and they will not want to continue talking to you or even hire you. So that's easy. Just be strategic. Just get alongside with them, build their trust, and then use that and eventually correct them in a nice way, in a way that they feel comforted while also educated. Okay? Last three topics. Show confidence in yourself. I use this a lot, a lot. There's this story of um, my mentor and I. We went to Walmart. Uh, one of the, I think it's over a million people that they work for them, and there was a steering committee and the largest multinational retail corporation, and they asked something, and he had the immediate answer to it. But what he did was like this. He received the question, he went, that's a very good question. Let me think that for a second. And he remained silent for like 4, 5, 6 seconds in front of the ExCom. So when you're doing that, not only you're acknowledging other people's perspective, you make that person feel important, but you're also showing the confidence that you can keep the whole ExCom waiting for your answer. And another technique that I use that a lot is when there's a little bit of tension or I need to say something that might be a little bit conflicting, I just laugh because this way you're disconnecting the person from the topic. And then it's like you smile all the time. Oh, that's such a great topic. I mean, I love that. I'm passionate about that. Let's talk about it. So don't worry. It's very hard that executives will know as much agility as you do. It's it's more of a matter of keeping the communication channel open. And the easiest way to keeping the communication channel open is by relieving relieving the tension from time to time, saying, "Wow, that's such a great question. Let me think about that. Never encountered that before." But making it like, let's just have a conversation. It's not an interview, even though in interviews I'm not acting as if I'm being interviewed because that makes it very formal, kind of the answer is right or wrong. While if you show your soft skills and you show that you can deal with any situation, they're more likely to get to know more and to want to know more about you and to engage with you, etc. Which is very much related to the next one: build a relationship. So there was this engagement that I had with somebody in Turkey, and this person was sharing, okay, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that. What do you think? When they say, "What do you think?" just be worse. They don't necessarily mean or they don't necessarily expect you to tell them what you think. Sometimes they expect you to validate what they think. So in this particular case, um, this guy was sharing, okay, I'm trying to do this, I will be doing that, what do you think? And my answer was, look, um, there's a difference between both of us. Whatever you decide, you'll live up to the consequences. So let why don't you use me as a sounding board? Why don't you share with me what you think? If that's okay, I'll share with you what I think about that, but I'll back you up with whatever decision you make, which is exactly what they need. They don't need you to challenge them. Potentially, you might just say, okay, that's a good, interesting approach. Let me offer you another one. Let me help you to broaden your vision. You still make the decision. And once you make the decision, I will help you. If you decide, I'll stick to my idea, even though I might completely think this is not the best possible idea. It's their idea, and the energy is behind that idea. Therefore, it's easier for you to rally behind their idea and then course correct than it is to confront and make them take your idea instead. So it's about, do you prioritize the relationship or do you prioritize being right? My suggestion is, when talking to executives, prioritize building a relationship, because you can continue having it, and ultimately you can talk freely with no filters or nothing, and they will benefit from it. And the last topic I wanted to bring up today is just be realistic. There comes this idea of Epictetus 2,000 years ago, this from Stoic philosopher, and he said there are things in your life that are in your control, and there are things in your life that are beyond your control. And the only thing that are in your control are your thoughts and your action. So somehow I used to relate that to transformations. And the way I do that is, there are some parameters that are in your control, some parameters are beyond your control and beyond their control as well. So making that obvious and putting them on the spotlight for not being able to address it will not help them and will not help you and will not help the relationship. Yes, obviously, um, I, all of us would love transformations to last for some time until people have changed, etc., and all of that. Yeah, but transformations, unfortunately, they have budgets. Sometimes they have schedule, and sometimes somebody decides, good, we're transformed. And that's part of the boundaries of the transformation. A couple of hours ago, I was talking to one of the VPs, and he would tell me, "Yeah, what we need to do is get rid of the hierarchy." Da, da, da. I said, that would be a great idea. It's not necessarily the more realistic idea that we can use in any large organization. There's hierarchy, there's politics, there's power plays. If some sponsor hired you and there's a new sponsor that takes over, it's likely that you will be fired because you were part of the previous sponsor. All of that happens. So it's easier to acknowledge that and get along the way than it is to try to confront everything at the same time and just say, okay, let's just throw everything out the window and let's just apply holacracy or sociocracy or liberating structures, whatever. Good. Those are not bad ideas. It just, you cannot apply them 0 to 100 on the spot. It takes time. People need to adjust. People need to change, etc. And do not challenge any of this before building previous point, before building a relationship. So I want you to leave you with these three takeaways, and then we'll open for questions. First takeaway: focus on what they need and match it to what you can offer. This idea of hunting ducks, this idea of First, I want to understand what your problem is. I want to be pragmatic. I want to be realistic. Do not focus on the problem space. Do not try to jump to the solution right away. I know some people that just go into transformation. Oh, we're considering um, bringing these three, four people, four teams together. Oh, okay, yes, you need safe, and then we're going to run an agile release train. Da, 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 da. Wait, first, you're using the wrong jargon. You probably want to impress them. Second, you probably don't know enough to claim something like this. Third, you don't necessarily need to use the full framework. You might just pick bits and pieces. And I know SAFe is not very liked in the community. So focus on what they need. It's much more important to focus on what they need and match it to what you can offer than it is to show all the big things that you can offer and then let have them figure out and do the hard work to connect what they're struggling with what you can offer. Okay. Second, build relationships. And you build relationships by communicating, obviously, exquisitely to them, by not using jargon, by ensuring that you don't outsmart them, that you don't challenge them, that you understand their context, everything we just said. By the way, by the end of the session, we can share the slides, ping me directly over LinkedIn or ask Bram or Abby, etc. So you want to be likable because if you're likable, the relationship can last for much longer and you have more touch points. You have more moments where you can influence the relationship and where you can influence the way they think. You want to build trust and then aim for a long-term relationship. And then last takeaway, follow through. Show them progress and show them evidence of progress. Whatever metrics you choose, do not just say, let's talk about this, that, and then try to evangelize and go through lots and lots of trainings. Show them evidence of progress. Help them pick a metric that can help them visualize that this is improving and go back to that metric. Ideally, business related, we all know that. Ideally, something that's easy to measure, we all know that, but just follow through. Okay? So thank you so much. And then I leave it to any questions you guys might have.
Thank you so much, Jordi. I think these were really good, informative nuggets. I think we have been experiencing it. We have tried some on our own, something that actually just reminds us, let's not forget this. And you also, like, you told some good stories. And I remember one of the stories where the coach working with us and directly to the with the stakeholders, the feedback I received from the stakeholder was the coach directly jumped into talking about Jira and tooling. What kind of response is this for not even understanding the problems? And that reminded me immediately, like the point you raised is many times we
Okay.
see people who forget to actually understand the problem from these people. Are there any questions, any comments from the group? I see
Yes.
Georgina.
You can remove the presentation if you want. We're
Yeah,
not going to use it anymore.
yeah, we will, of course. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Georgina commented on fantastic tips that I will definitely find useful for that one. In the beginning, sorry, by the
Thank
way, in the
you,
beginning, we
Georgina.
had a little bit of technical glitch because some people could see the presentation in the browser. So first few minutes of like around 5 minutes, while we could see, some people couldn't see it. So there was a bit of miscoms going on there. I actually had a question about this. So how do we talk to execs that are not honest about their buy-in for transformation? Because you said, okay, let's be honest ourselves. But what if you see that there is a bit of dishonesty from their end where they're playing lip service?
Um, well, first you need to acknowledge that probably that's what they need to do to continue surviving and the complex organization that they live in. And I have no problems with lip service. What helps me a lot is to understand when they're doing lip service, why Lip service, for those of you that are not English speakers, is basically parroting or repeating whatever one at the higher position is just saying. So I'm happy if that's the case. I just try to understand, is it them talking or is it somebody else talking? If it's them talking and that's their own ideas and I build the relationship, I'm happy to explore alternatives. That's a nicer way than saying challenge them. If it's somebody else doing that, probably they're trying to get an answer that they can parrot back up to their managers. So I try to provide their answer. I generally do not expose them. And
Mm-hmm.
then I continue working on building this confidence so that whenever they feel ready, they want to share that with you. This is like detecting that somebody is tricking is tricking you, and then you know that they know that, but they don't know that you know that. And then you
Mm-hmm.
continue acting as if you're a nice guy and you're trying to positively help, etc. When the relationship is built, all communication can go through. My experience is before that, if you challenge them and they feel exposed, they might decide that they don't want to continue talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. We got some thanks from Matthew here. We got another top tips, Jody, and Graham is also mentioning about fantastic talk. There is a
Yes.
question from Gerardo. How impact may have the right moment in a conversation like this? I mean, what if the conversation takes place once the strategy for the next 3 years has already been set up and committed? Um, what do you think
When
about
we're
this?
talking about how impact might have the right moment in the conversation, I'm not sure I understand the question. What if the conversation takes place? What? Oh, yes, you live up to the consequences of it. I mean, it would be so great if we could be part of the decision making of a
Right.
transformation and
Thinking.
deciding when, in which 3-year strategic plan you want the transformation to take place. But that doesn't happen. So it's much better to understand where you are, know the context, not of the executive, but of the organization and what point they are in the transformation at that moment, and then figure out how can you best help them from that point onwards. For example,
Mm,
I tend to go a lot to transformations that they previously had. This company we mentioned before, McKinsey, and they just had the PowerPoint and everything, and they spent a lot of money in that. Good. I might challenge them and tell them, "Oh, this is not what you should be doing." Da 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 da. That's not going to help anybody. So what I do instead is, okay, what's the point of the transformation? We are that this has been decided. The CEO has validated that, and then we're running it, and they need you to support here. Okay, if I can gain credibility, gain authority, gain influence, and get ultimately to talk to the decision makers, usually ExCo members, then I want to do that. But the only way to do that is to jump on the existing train that's already moving in a certain direction, try to go to the front of the train, and then slowly help them understand that potentially there might be alternatives. I didn't have Yes, I had a couple of experiences where I could influence a lot on how the transformation should be structured and everything. And even in those experiences, they did not end up where I wanted them to end up, etc. So it's
mm,
more of managing the expectations for yourself. Do not get frustrated when the transformation is not exactly going how you should it should be going. I've been participating in over, I don't know, 20, 25 transformations. Um, it never went the way I wanted it to go, but I always felt that I could contribute a little bit so that it could improve a little.
interesting, interesting. Thanks. There's one more question coming from Matthew who says, ideally, who should hire a coach?
Um, Depends what you want to do with a coach. I assume an agile coach. Um, Potentially a combination of other agile coaches, existing agile coaches that know the context, both internally or externally, especially if there's some sort of team of coaches and you need to work alongside with them. In my previous company, this is something we would do, and it was working great. It was this idea of I don't need to. I was the director of a department, business transformation, and we would need to hire coaches. So what I would say is I didn't need to validate the skills of that person. So I just
Mhm.
want you guys to go talk to that person and have lunch with them. So have lunch meaning we're going to cover the expenses for the lunch. 3 or 4 coaches go meet the coach and then ask them questions, etc. And the answer I want to hear is this something you would recommend? Is this something you would feel comfortable working next to? If they would say yes, good, I would get the person. Hard skills are easier to train than soft skills. So um, if we focus from a consulting company perspective, that would be my answer. If we focus from a transformation perspective, it's a combination of somebody from the client plus somebody that has the experience and the acumen to perceive what is needed, and if that coach can bring that.
I think if I'm just reading the question correctly, I think it's the sponsorship of the coach, the agile coach coming in the organization. Then probably who should hire in terms of like who should validate and get them in or interview them in. So maybe it's the sponsorship, and we're talking about the concept of like how to talk to executives, and
Yes,
if the executives are hiring, so who should be the people who
yes.
hire? Hmm.
That's a very valid point. Usually, what I find is sponsorship of a transformation is considerably and consistently less knowledgeable about transformations than coaches that they hire, and
Hmm.
that is normal, and that should remain normal because basically, um, a sponsorship is composed of very frequently or sometimes people that have been in the same organization for a long time. Therefore, they didn't have the experience of going through multiple transformations. Therefore, yes, they know their context very well, but they don't know much more outside of their context and they don't know how to transform. It's like asking the fish to describe the water that it's in it, right? And in those cases, if the sponsorship of the transformation hires the coach, my suggestion is get somebody that's knowledgeable first,
Hmm.
but that's also relatable and can talk business and can engage with business, and get that person in the meeting so that a little bit of that knowledge can also be validated before hiring people.
Okay.
Hmm.
I think we are bang on. Actually, we are 2 minutes past time. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Thank you so much, Jordi, for sharing the information nuggets. I think
Sure.
there was one comment about like the flip cards or the cards to remember or Anki software. Uh, I'll just I'll just
Yes.
I'll just put that in there. A good tool to help you memorize.
Oh,
I like
yes.
the sharing knowledge like this. Like I didn't know about this, so that's cool. I would definitely check this out.
Yes, this is basically 1 minute answer. Spaced repetition technique. Basically, when you want to know something, you want to get it closer to you.
Yeah.
It's not helpful to say, "Oh, this comes from the book from David Anderson," da, 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 because that makes you look like a jerk. It's more of if you're able to relate that to that, then that's helpful. And the way I've been doing that for the last 7 or 8 years is get whatever I want to learn closer and then
Mm.
have exposure to it. And the way you do that, this memorization technique is called space repetition. And Anki is a
Amazing.
space
Amazing.
repetition system tool.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. On that note, thank you everybody for joining and having our first knowledge sharing of 2023.
2023.
So have a
All right.
fantastic year
Thank
ahead,
you so
guys,
much
and
for
we will see
inviting
you
me.
more in future webinars. Take care. Bye bye.
Right. Thank you so much. Bye. Bye bye.